morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Jeremias Kibrab. I'm the Director of World Food Center, Associate Dean of Global Engagement, and Professor of Animal Science at the University of California, Davis. Today, we are presenting the 7th in a series of independent dialogues supported by USDA FAS as a precursor to the United Nations Food Systems Summit in September of this year. Today's dialogue targets Track 2, which focuses on shifting to sustainable consumption patterns. And today's dialogue is titled Innovations in Horticulture for Safe Production of Vegetables and Reduction of Food Waste. Thank you to our facilitator, panelists, and other invited experts for being with us. And thanks also to those of you watching the recording of this dialogue. The format for today's event is as follows. The facilitator will give an overview of the topic, then introduce the panelists. Each panelist will give a brief presentation, and after the presentations, there will be a moderated dialogue amongst all participants and panelists. We are looking for expert dialogue around 6 areas. First is to provide sectoral context for the particular innovations under examination, why these innovations are important, what other themes or innovations in this action track are also important. Second is to encourage discussion of potential gaps in the science and evidence base that warrant continuing research. Third is encourage discussion of the potential of these innovations to deliver food systems solutions, whether they might even be considered game changers. Fourth is to identify potential areas of divergence or debate among the experts and participants. Fifth is to memorialize common perspectives or themes. And finally, foster expert consensus on next steps and new directions. Before we begin, there are a few housekeeping items to cover. Invited guests' microphones are muted for now. We will unmute you after the presentations end. And please hold your questions until the discussion period and use the raise hand feature in your toolbar to be addressed. And if you have any issues, send a chat to the host and you will get targeted help. And the video recording will be available in a few weeks on the World Food Center website. Now I'd like to introduce you our facilitator for today, Dr. Elizabeth Mitchum. Dr. Mitchum is an extension specialist and post-harvest pomologist in the Department of Plant Sciences at the University of California, Davis. And Dr. Mitchum works closely with the produce industry on a range of research and outreach activities. She also serves as the director of the UC Post-Harvest Technology Center. The center focuses on maintaining the quality and safety of fruits and vegetables after harvest through their educational programs and informative websites. Dr. Mitchum has been active in international development activities and served as director of the Horticulture Innovation Lab program funded by USAID from 2009 to 2019. And Dr. Mitchum was elected Outstanding International Horticulturalist and elected Vice President of the International Division of American Society for Horticultural Science. And her team won the UC Davis Chancellor's Innovation Award in 2018, and she was elected a Fellow of the American Society for Horticultural Sciences. Thank you for agreeing to facilitate the discussion today, and I will pass it on to you and leave it in your capable hands.
So horticultural crops are some of the most nutritious crops that people need to eat, but worldwide we're not eating enough. And there are a number of reasons for this. Part of it is that these are very perishable crops. We're not producing enough, and there are challenges with safety of these crops as well. Nutritious foods are more perishable and they're also more expensive. So this makes them less accessible for people around the world to purchase them, and especially in low-income countries. We want to increase consumption because of the nutritional value of these crops. And to do that, first of all, we need to increase the year-round production of these crops in a sustainable manner. This means using inputs more efficiently, reducing losses and waste. And the 3 technologies that we're going to be highlighting today all deal with different aspects of either increasing production of safe, nutritious vegetables or reducing the losses after harvest, which also will make produce more successful. or more available. So the Horticulture Innovation Lab, many of you are probably familiar with it, but this is a program that's funded by USAID, was managed by UC Davis from 2009 to 2019. And it was a collaborative program where US universities work together with research partners in emerging economies around the world on projects related to horticulture. And the activities you're going to hear about in our session this morning were all funded through the Horticulture Innovation Lab. So the technologies include safe production of vegetables in Cambodia. And we have two speakers who are going to be joining us to talk about this program. We have Thort Truong, who's from St. Paul Institute in Cambodia. Thort got his BS in crop science from Hanoi University of Agriculture, and he has a double master's from UC Davis in horticulture and agronomy, and also international ag development under a Fulbright scholarship. He currently serves as the deputy head of Department of Agriculture at his institute. And he's also the manager of a social entrepreneurship project helping Cambodia farmers install and produce vegetables under protected net houses. After we hear from Thort, we will be hearing from Dr. Boraran Buntan, who's from the Royal University of Agriculture. Dr. Buntan received his PhD from King Mongkut University of Technology in Thailand in post-harvest technology. And he serves as the Director of Research and Extension at the Royal University of Agriculture in Cambodia. He conducts research and training in packaging and storage of fresh produce. Next, we're going to hear about cold chain and how cold chain can be used to maintain quality and extend availability of vegetables. And we're also going to hear about effective drying and dry storage. So our first speaker in these topics is going to be Michael Reed, Dr. Michael Reed. He is an emeritus professor and extension specialist in plant sciences at UC Davis. And he focused his career on post-harvest biology and technology, particularly of ornamental crops. He served with the management team of the Horticulture Innovation Lab and was closely involved in the development and demonstration of innovative technologies, including the solar coolbot room and the chimney and pallet solar dryers and the dry card, which you're going to hear about today. And then we have Mr. Archie Jarman. Archie is a recent graduate of UC Davis in the International Agriculture Development Master's Program. He has over a decade of international development experience in a variety of fields, including agriculture. Archie was a program officer for 7 years with the Horticulture Innovation Lab working on, restart that. Archie was a program officer for approximately 7 years in projects offering solutions for challenges faced by rice, wheat, and horticulture farmers in sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, and Central America with Arcadia Biosciences and also the Horticulture Innovation Lab. And then we also have Seraphin Nyansanga, who is a dry card promoter from Rwanda. All right, Seraphin is a former Humphrey Fellow at UC Davis from 2016 to 2017 in the field of agriculture and rural development. He was the first to introduce the dry card in Rwanda and mobilize stakeholders to upscale the technology and reach more farmers in Rwanda and other African countries. And then our final presenter is going to talk about training and educational programs. And he is Dr. Julio Lopez, and he is from the Zamorano University in Honduras. And Julio is an associate professor and coordinator of rural development projects and director of the Regional Innovation Center for Vegetables and Fruit at Zamorano University. All right, so that's our panel. You can see we have a broad range of expertise. So next slide, please. So just to quickly introduce these topics before we get started. So production of safe vegetables is very important to give consumers the confidence that it's safe to eat these products that are oftentimes consumed raw or barely cooked. And so you're going to hear about introduction of net houses to allow for production of safe vegetables, and also improvements in the supply chain of these vegetables and their connection to the marketplace. Next slide. Good post-harvest handling is really a key link between production and markets. It's important to bring returns to the farmer and the farmer's family, to help reduce losses and waste, which is really important for sustainability, and to allow the farmer to meet the demands of the market. So whether it's a new market that we're trying to access with our crops, or just to maintain the markets that we have. And that market potential, that potential to earn income from the crop, is critical to allow farmers to invest in the time and the resources needed to have good post-harvest practices. So high temperatures is a critical issue for these perishable crops. Exposure to high temperatures leads, and low relative humidity leads to excessive water loss and deterioration. And lack of cool chain is a pervasive problem in many emerging economies. Temperature is so critical to maintaining quality after harvest. Without cooling, farmers have to sell the crop very quickly after harvest. They're not able to gather groups and quantity of product together over multiple harvests to sell. It reduces the nutritional value of these crops and makes them less available in the lean season when production is low. So really, this is an issue that has to be resolved, in my view, to reduce perishable losses and also improve nutrition security. So you're going to hear about a low-cost cold storage technology that's been trialed in many parts around the world. The CoolBot controller being used with an AC unit to create small-scale cold rooms that are less expensive than conventional refrigeration. Another way of stabilizing these perishable crops after harvest is with drying. And actually that can be used with fruits and vegetables, but also other crops. Drying adds value. It stabilizes the crop. So if you have more crop than you can sell as a fresh product, it can be dried and eaten and sold in the off season. And there are lots of different dryers that have been developed over the years. Some work better than others. And, traditionally, a lot of people just lay their product out on the ground, which of course has issues in terms of food safety. So you're going to hear a bit about a novel, two different actually dryers that were developed at UC Davis and are being trialed in various places around the world that are more effective at drying reasonable quantities of product. And then finally, once the product's dry, it needs to be dry stored. And farmers have not had an inexpensive and simple way to determine if their product is dry enough to be safely stored. If the product's not sufficiently dry, it can grow mold and produce toxins which are not safe. And so you're going to hear about the dry card technology and how that's being scaled to address this issue. And then finally, we're going to hear about some of the educational and outreach efforts through regional centers that were developed under the Horticulture Innovation Lab to extend all this knowledge to farmers and assist with knowledge and knowledge transfer and also implementation of these technologies. Okay, so that ends my presentation. And my goal with that was just to introduce this topic to you, to emphasize the importance of increasing availability of these nutritious foods and some of the challenges that come with that. So now we are going to turn to our first presenter, and he's already been introduced, and that is Thort Chuang from Cambodia to talk about the net houses.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Thort, as you know, so I'm gonna talk about the adoptions of net houses by vegetable farmer in Cambodia, and mostly by small scale vegetable farmer. Next slide, please. So the main problems that we have in Cambodia is that we like to eat a lot of leafy greens, but for many times that farmer produce leafy green just mainly along the riversides, and through times they constantly increase the density use of the pesticides, and it's become like very unsafe. So I graduated from Vietnam as a crop science for my bachelor degree, and I always think that Cambodia have a better products or use less pesticides, but when I got graduated and moved back to Cambodia and worked with Cambodian farmer, I got so surprised that our farmer in Cambodia also use so much pesticides, and it's marketable. That is the main problem, because we do not have a good regulations on the pesticide residues, mainly on the leafy greens. So through the USAID funded projects and through Horticulture Innovation Lab, we have introduced new technologies, which is called the net houses. Next slide, please. So in these 4 pictures, I just want to introduce you the way or how this net house technologies was introduced to farmer. So the pictures A, it's kind of like the picture, it kind of like the demonstrations, like the first time demonstrations of the how net house idea can be used to substitute of pesticide use in Cambodia to the farmer that we invited from the local, from the village at IUA. And we just want them to get the ideas how it works. And eventually we find one farmers that are willing to give us a piece of land to do the which is it was a little bit of lucky, I think, the quality of material at all in Cambodia at that time. I think in 2013, vegetable grow very well, and for the first time that the farmer do not have to spray pesticide at all for the Chinese scale for a lifespan for the growing period of 45 days. So he got so impressive on that, and then we luckily imported the better quality nets from Vietnam. And we find new volunteers, farmers, which is 9 of them, willing and allow us to install a small 10 by 4 by 10 meter net house, which is made from a bamboo frame, which is the C and D. And that's kind of like the first vegetable we grow inside the better quality net house in the D. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are the first farmer that was that he got adopted, and he like a doctor, but it's can you go back to the previous slide, just one?
We can see the previous slide now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. So these are this is the first net house that got adopted from the idea that we introduced at the RUA. And he kind of like the first person who willing to try and willing to invest about $500 just to buy the net material. And because we understand that working with local community, we have a financial limited with them, and the projects cannot pay for them at all. So we kind of like work with them and figure out how to build the structures, and farmer have a freedom to choose just making it from bamboo and the wooden sticks. So it's not last very long. It lasts about 2 years and then it's collapsed, but it does give us idea, and other farmer work together to design a better structures. Can you move to the next one? Yeah, so in these pictures, it was me and one of the third farmer who adopted net houses, and you can see now the pillar. It's made from the concrete, and it's such it's an improved structures already, and the farmers looks very happy, and the vegetable inside there growing without using any pesticides, and the yield is also quite impressive. Can you move to the next slide, please? Okay, so then it's come to me that plays a very important role in these adoptions after the project ends. So I kind of like come up with the ideas that farmer have problem with the structure. So I design it. So actually this is my own design in a Microsoft Word, because I do not know how to draw on the other software. So make everything from the wood, from a metal structure, and learn from the previous mistake that farmer report to us that they have a problem growing their vegetable during the rainy seasons because their evaporation inside the net house is quite low. So we come up with this design and then cover on the top by the plastics and surrounded by the nets, which improve the productions by avoiding the waterlogging problem in the raining seasons, and also well protected from the insects. Can you move to the next slide? Next slide, please. Yeah, so, but it's not ending there. We still have a lot of things to do. We learn from the farmer very quickly that this structure solve one problem, but still have another problem, which is building heat inside the net houses. So we learn from that mistake, and then we design a better one, which is semi-open roof, which is better. And now it's one of the most popular and adapted structures by Cambodian farmer. Can you move to the next slide, please? Okay, yeah, so in these pictures, what I would just want to show you is that we build this kind of net houses to many different farmers around Cambodia. And we got a quite impressive product from the net houses, which is totally free of chemical, and the vegetable just grow amazing inside there. And the air circulation is kind of like improved better. So farmer no longer complain about like heat building inside the net houses. Next, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
I think we're getting a little delay on your end with the slide advance. Sorry, which slide would you like up?
Okay. I think it should be fine. I think just our own institute, since I got a chance to work with St. Paul, I also got a chance to introduce this net house technologies to the institutes. And we have, like, for the first time in 13 years, that students have net houses and to grow vegetable. And I also used the experience that I gained from what I worked with USAID and what I gained from UC Davis and shared with the students of my institutes, and they're all very happy. That's all the previous slide I want to talk about. But let's move to this slide. So I get this from my thesis that I did for my master at UC Davis, and it is the analysis of the net houses comparing with the conventional in Cambodia's setting. If you look at the red line, it is the conventional cost, how much input cost that I did for the net present value for 10 years, which compare the lifespans of the net houses that we estimated. It's kind of like an average line of the cost of the net houses. But if you look at the green line, which is the net present value that we gain from the net house, it's kind of like all the time above the conventional, and it's always benefit. So it's kind of the things that prove that net houses is not just only sustainable in terms of solving the problem of pesticide use and environmental problem, but it's really make sure that this solve the financial problem for the farmers as well. Can you move to the next slide, please? It's almost come to an end. Next slide. Okay, this one. So this is what I want to talk about, the current status of the new net house technologies that we had. Just from my own, because after the project ends, I pick it up as the private sectors as a net house provider. We have installed almost 100 net houses throughout Cambodia. And with the net present value analysis that I made, net houses really proving that is a promising technologies in Cambodia in terms of vegetable production. Our clients, it's that got net house from us, it's a wide range. It's from a research institute, university, NGO, private sectors, farmers as well. And what I noticed for the last couple of years, for the last 2 years, we got a lot of order and attention from the Ministries of Agriculture, which is a very good sign that the government also like this technology. And also for some marketer, they require net house as the prerequisite to get the contract farming with them, which is very good for the farmer who already had the net houses. I also noticed that there are more net house providers in Cambodia. To me, I'm not feeling it is a competitive, my competitor, because we work together and now it's all over Cambodia, and we all together can make sure that it reaches to the farmer hand. Can you move to the next slide, please? Yeah, so this is the last thing that I want to say.
Oh, sorry, Thort, I thought we had lost you. Thank you so much for that presentation, and that last part about building trust, I think is super important. Lots of stuff in your presentation that we will want to unpack during the discussion. So for those of you listening, please make a note of your questions, your input that you'd like to add to that discussion about production of safe vegetables under protected culture. So now we're going to move to a short presentation by Dr. Boren Buntang, and he's going to talk about how these safe vegetables have been handled in a packing house system in Cambodia. So Moran, I'll have you take it away.
Thank you very much, Beth, and good evening from Cambodia. Good morning to you over there. I believe it's the morning there, very early morning. So I have very good chance to join this event, and I am very pleased to talk about the safe production and improve handling, which is the same project as Todd has mentioned, mainly because we talking about the nut houses, and the next I'm also adding the packing house, or mainly in the packing house we would like to refer to the cold room using the cold box technology that has been adopted or has been introduced to Cambodia for the cold chain, because the cold chain is very important to, as many post-harvest technology understand that it can keep or prolong the shelf life and maintain the quality of the vegetable and safety as well for the consumer and for the income of the farmer. So I had the problem again, the same. I lost my content. I'm sorry, may I? Oh, I'm sorry. This is actually here. So this is actually the outline that I'm going to talk. So it will be about the vegetable production at the Glen in Cambodia, and then I'm talking in adding from Todd, the first speaker, about the towards safe vegetable in Cambodia, and then about the packing house development, and with the conclusion from experience as a lesson learned from our activity for the last 10 years under the USAID funded project through Horticulture Innovation Lab. So here I just would like to mention that the vegetable demand in Cambodia, it has increasing sharply. And we can see also the cultivated area, the harvested area, and also the production of the vegetable in Cambodia. For especially, this is just highlight for the last 5 years. It has been increasing a lot. For example, like the cultivation, like from 78,000 hectare in 2015 to 94,541 hectare in 2019, as well as also the production. So I will not describe many because I have a lot of slides, but I have very short time to go. And here I just would like also to highlight again that the vegetable value, the agriculture has provided a very significant value for the economic as well as for the income of the, especially for the small scale farmer. So this is the last 10 years we have seen also the value has increased. This is the figure is in million real, but we can see the number is also increasing. And in addition to the value, as I mentioned, the vegetable is also share the into the agriculture sector to the GDP of Cambodia. It's a little bit fluctuate up and down, but of course the trend is the same. It's increasing sharply for the last 10 years. I would like to highlight why the safe vegetable production and the handling is important in Cambodia. So since long time, and as always, like many other studies, especially for my own studies in like 2013, we have seen that the post-harvest loss of the vegetable still be the problem, big problem, big concern for the value chain or the supply chain of the vegetable. So in here, I try to define different supply chain as defined as the traditional supply chain and the modern supply chain, where the traditional supply chain just mentioned about the supply from the farmer through collector, but just very like unofficial collector through wholesaler and to the weight market, which is plenty where almost everywhere in Cambodia, while a modern supply chain just to define like the supply of the vegetable also from farmer, but just through the a little bit more aggregate or more official as the collection center or with the packing house, a proper packing house, and then the produce to the supermarket. And then in here, when we study, we have found that the traditional supply chain, the law is still very high, like 30% or even more. It's depend on different crop as well, and depend on the different location. While when we introduce the modern supply chain, where the packing house, where the cold room, where the proper handling has been provided for through the training to the farmer, then the post-harvest losses has increased more or less like almost 50% in here, that the post-harvest loss decreased through the proper handling technique or through the proper training provided to the stakeholder, to the actor in the supply chain. And of course, there's along the way of the supply chains, always the post-harvest loss happen in all states. But here, I just would like to only 2 points for the cause of the losses, mainly because of the inappropriate handlings due to the lack of post-harvest knowledge, and then the lack of infrastructure technology. In addition to the post-harvest loss, sometimes or most of the time, this food safety concern. Food safety is also the concern for the end user, for the consumer, because if you can see in here, like the water for washing or the unhygienic that from the small scale farmer, they still are very common practices in Cambodia. And then in terms of the losses, for example, in this one, we can see the inappropriate transportation is always occur. And then even up to now, there's still a lot. Even there is the coal truck has been introduced for some places already, but it's just very small starting. And then these practices contribute a lot of losses to the vegetable sector. And again, in the market as well, we can see the unhygiene and improper practices is still always happen, and we can see almost every like wet market. So luckily for Cambodia, especially for the Royal University of Agriculture, for me and the teams, we have got 2 phases of the under the USAID funded project through HotScript, the first one, and the second one we changed the name to Horticulture Innovation Lab since 2010 up to 2015. Up to 2019. So the first one we are focused a lot, and it seemed like very successful introducing the net house as the thought already presented about how the practice has been doing for the first one. And I would like to address or highlight the second phase for also the HIL funded projects from 2015 to 2019. And here we have introduced 2 main activity: the compost. No, not the 2, like 3, the compost, and also we improve the net house. And also we introduced the packing house or the cold room for storage of the vegetable. So in our project, we have worked with mainly 2 provinces in Siem Reap and in Battambang province. And this is in Battambang province that we launched the packing house and the earthworm compost center in Battambang province. So we would like to introduce because like the Todd has mentioned that Cambodian farmer, especially for the small scale farmer, when they grow vegetable, they always apply a lot of chemical fertilizer and also apply a lot of the chemical pesticides, where very big concern for the consumer in terms of the pesticide residual. And here just to mention or to show the packing house for it was already more than 7 years, but more than 6 years, 6 years. But of course, this building is already like modified. It's to be like bigger than during we have set up for them because of the benefit, or because of they see how important of the packing house, or how important of the cold chain, and the importance of the vegetable production, especially for the safe production growing under the nets. Then the facility has been already improved and increased in terms of the scale. And then in this picture, just to show about the also the packing house, a small scale packing house in Siem Reap, and has been also used by the small scale farmers over there. Before we introduce to the the two provinces, we have try a lot in the university. So this is the first packing house that we have developed. And even the first time, it's not safe like this. We have learned some constraints, but later we have improved for the first one. And then after we successfully already introduced to the province, then we come back to also improve the shape and improve the quality as well for the cold room, which is one part of the packing house. I did not show the other area for the washing, packaging in this one, but in this one in the university, and it just only used for the research and for the student practice. Come back to here in Battambang province. In the first time that we have the washing area for the vegetable, and then the drying place, the packing area, and also like for transportation that we have developed by our project. And then in this one, currently, even after the project end, but of course the supply of the self vegetable production is still continue. They supply to Phnom Penh, to the supermarket, different supermarket, famous one in Cambodia, the Aeon and the Macro, and as well as the other small department store where we consider the safe activity has been provided there better than the wet market. They also use the cold room that using the cool bot that I believe the next speaker will talk about how the cool bot will work in the in this kind of cold room. And again, this is in Battambang province, and in Battambang province where we have launching our activity for the projects. Beside the two provinces that we have introduced, of course, there are other agricultural cooperatives that have adopted the technology. So this one is in Svay, where the area is not supported at all by our project, but of course we have introduced them about the cold room, about the packing house, and of course the technology, the cool bot that introduced to them. And up to now, they have used this one very successfully and very effectively in terms of post-harvest losses decrease, in terms of maintain the quality for supply from Svay, where about like 200 kilometers away from the main market in the capital of Cambodia, Phnom Penh. And this is, I would like to show how the cold room that we introduced using the cold bot technology very effective. The tomato, the eggplant that we have saved a lot of the weight loss. Within the cool box, it's just only about 5%. For about like for tomato is about like a week, and then while in ambience it lost about like 10 to 12%. And then the satellite is also different. For the cool bot, it can like almost 1 month, and the ambient just about like 12 days only. and so on for the other crop that we have highlighted. Almost the last slide of mine. This is just the about the where what kind of the cold room that they have been used, because the cold room is one of the important part for the packing house practices. And of course, we have introduced a lot of our technology coolbot for the cold room to different AC. It's not just 2 and 3 that we have mentioned, but currently there are several. This technology has been different provinces in Cambodia. And this is my last slide. I just would like to share what we have learned from our project and from what we have seen of the activity when we introduce the technology, especially for the safe vegetable production. Of course, for the net house from thought, I would like to highlight that when we introduced the first time, the farmer they always just say something behind that they don't believe at all that the net house will work. But after we have introduced the small one, as Todd mentioned, then up to now there are a lot of modified, and everywhere in the province in Cambodia we can see the net house now around the Cambodia, which is my dream for the last 10 years. So I have learned that safe production and good handling practices for vegetable in Cambodia still play important roles for the livelihood improvement, especially for the small scale and for the sustainability for and food security. And the packing house, which is one of the main part for the cold chain and the cold chain in the supply chain of vegetable, is effectively demonstrated that we introduce them, so it can help to reduce the post-harvest loss of the vegetable in Cambodia. Adaptation and scaling up of new technology, especially for safe vegetable production, for example, the net house, the packing house, and the earthworm compost, is easily to be diffused into the community if the market drivers can be seen by the consumer or by the people in Cambodia. So that's all from my presentation, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Borar, and that was a very interesting presentation, and I know there's going to be a lot of discussion about the many points that you brought up. So following on from Borarin's presentation, we're now going to hear from Archie Jarman and Michael Reed. I think Archie's going to lead this discussion off, and the two of them are going to be talking now about small-scale cold chain, and particularly the coolbot room. So I will turn it to you. Thank you so much.
Great. So my name is Archie Jarman. I'll be relatively brief so we can have some good discussion on this. And that was a great intro from Borarin. Captures a lot of my lead in anyway. And I'll be presenting with Michael Reed. So here on this slide, we see, a fully functional cold chain that we may see in a lot of developing country contexts where they have the technology and processes in place to preserve fruits and vegetables from harvest all the way to the consumer. And then the other thing to consider is at the consumer, there's refrigerators also to preserve fruits and vegetables. But implementing this cold chain in developing countries is incredibly challenging. As Borarin highlighted, there's a lack of training and awareness. Infrastructure can be also lacking. I hate to repeat myself, but also there's a component of finances and getting loans and dealing with government tariffs, and can be really challenging to access the equipment and materials needed in order to implement the cold chain in developing countries. So what you end up with is the ambient supply chain, which is pictured here, where at the farm all the way to the market, the fruits and vegetables are under ambient air temperatures, which in this image, this is actually from India, you can have significant losses because of the high temperatures in certain areas. So a solution is needed in order to reduce those losses. So Borarin hit on this. This is the coolbot. The coolbot technology is actually developed here in the US. It's really simple. In the upper right, you see the actual monitoring unit, which is a motherboard that it's the intelligence of the unit. And to the left, you just see a home AC unit. That's a just basic air conditioning unit you can buy for your house. And it actually tricks the air conditioning unit into thinking that the room is way hotter than it actually is. And it can drive down the temperature without freezing the fins to 0 degrees Celsius. So great storage temperature for a lot of fruits and vegetables. And you can see here that the heater coil coming out in red connects to the thermostat sensor. And that's kind of the key part, that line is hot and the thermostat sensor thinks it's hot in the room. So we've implemented this through the Horticulture Innovation Lab in Honduras, Bangladesh, Thailand, Cambodia, Guinea, Burkina Faso, Rwanda, and India. And I wanted to pull up a case study in terms of Bangladesh. It's really nice to hear how effective it's working in Cambodia and the success that's happened there. We had some challenges in terms of implementing in Bangladesh. There's advantages, of course. One key thing with the Kuba is that the most common part that breaks is actually the AC unit. And if the AC unit breaks, there's frequently technicians in country that can repair it versus, a modern cold storage unit can require highly trained technicians to repair that unit. It's still relatively low cost compared to other cold rooms. And then a key thing is it provides leverage to farmers, because when farmers don't have a cold storage unit and they go to the market, if their product is perishable and it starts to lose its quality, they lose their bargaining power with the middlemen or the traders. So the cold storage allows them to either return the produce back to the cold storage or just to keep it and bargain with the traders while it's in cold storage, maintaining the quality. But there were some significant challenges. There's high tariffs in Bangladesh on the insulative panels, and you want to use high quality insulative panels if possible, because that also correlates to energy usage. If you use low quality insulation, you're going to be using more energy to cool the unit. So with those high costs of the insulative panels, the return on investment for this project was fairly far out. Is a long time for a developing country context where your returns need to be a little bit sooner since the margins are extremely thin. And then there was also a component of maintenance and ownership within the farming co-ops, who was actually in charge, and then finally intermittent power supply. So focusing on that one challenge, at UC Davis with the Horticulture Innovation Lab, we developed a solar powered CoolBot. This is how it works. It's fairly simple. It takes 6 245 watt panels that charge the lithium ion batteries. You can see the lithium ion batteries at the bottom. Central to this unit is a battery control monitor, which can both gauge how much voltage remains in the batteries and also controls the voltage that is going to, to the AC unit that you see to the right, or to the left, sorry, which cools the room. And then also there's a solar charge controller that comes off the solar panels, which also, regulates the voltage coming into the unit. Fairly simple. This is a very simple diagram, and I want to highlight that it can get a lot more complicated and it can be challenging to set up, but there are some promising things in terms of actually coming up with this technology and making it work. So the advantages are that it's a standalone unit. It doesn't require grid connection. And then it kind of feeds into the other advantages that the CoolBot has too, where it's a simple home AC unit. The AC unit, so that's accessible technology. The AC unit repair can be a technician just in country. And then one part of the reason why we pursued this as a technology is we see an increasing accessibility of solar panels in a lot of developing country contexts, along with the batteries. And I didn't specify lithium ion batteries in here because there's really no reason why you couldn't use a deep cycle lead acid battery, and then Michael will talk about some other options that could be more low cost than the lithium ion. Although the lithium ion does have some significant advantages, but it can be replaced or substituted. And again, there's still challenges. The insulated panels are a huge driving cost of this unit. And then of course, there's, regardless of accessibility, those batteries are still pricey. You're looking at, return on investment that can be still far out for a farmer. So, there's still a ways to go in terms of advancing the technology, but we still feel like this is a good kind of pilot unit that could maybe be scaled somewhere else. And then I wanted to highlight here the battery monitoring unit. It took actually a couple of years to find the correct battery monitoring unit that works optimally. So that, again, presents a challenge in terms of sourcing it in other places. Going back to the installation, so the installation is I'll say the unit in Davis costs, the installation's around $2,500. So it is a huge driving cost of the technology. Although the CoolBot itself is only $300, the installation is where the money goes into. So we started thinking of some low-cost solutions. Here's an image of some bricks. Another one that we looked into was hay bales wrapped in plastic. We actually did a kind of small test to test the R value, the insulative value of the hay bales, and they would work really well. The one concern is if they get wet, they will start molding. But there are potentially other approaches out there. And then of course, converting existing defunct cold rooms into CoolBot cold rooms. We've had some very good success in Guinea doing this, where there was old cold rooms, broke down, no technicians to repair it, and we installed a CoolBot device. And then again, this highlights some of what Boron was talking about, that in implementing this, site selection is really key. So you want to make sure there's access to markets, that there could be a cooperative that shares the cost of the unit. Of course, also access to the equipment and materials. You don't want it to be expensive to source them. Determining who's going to maintain and own the product so that there's sustained protection or maintenance is key. And then I also want to highlight here quickly, of course, training, but we see a role for the government to play in this. So either subsidizing these units, considering the amount of losses that happen within fruit and vegetable supply chains, it is in the interest of the government to increase, access to either subsidize these units or to at least at a minimum reduce the tariffs that might be on different parts of the CoolBot unit, including the solar panels, including the insulative panels that come in, so that this is more of a viable option. And then finally, encouraging loans that are at very, very low interest rates for farmers would be a huge step towards getting, these units on the ground and more fiscally viable. And then Michael, I think you wanted to note this challenge here.
Yeah, so just very briefly, of course, the difficulty with solar power for refrigeration is the sun's only out in the daytime, and in many environments that we're interested in, nighttime temperatures are still pretty high. The lithium-ion batteries that Archie mentioned basically keep the unit going during the day and for a short time during the night, but you need a pretty large battery bank to provide substantial refrigeration during the night. There are game-changing alternatives on the horizon. There's a system called lead carbon batteries invented in Australia that are now being deployed in the US. They're much cheaper than lithium-ion batteries, but have essentially the same longevity and characteristics. But the great thing is they use standard lead acid technology for charging and maintenance. Other alternatives that we might discuss is what I call overnight inertia. If you fill a room and cool the product in it, it will warm relatively slowly if the insulation is good. And one of the things about insulation that we've learned is that it's really important to have a vapor barrier on the outside of the room to prevent the insertion of water vapor into the room and into the insulation itself. And then another interesting opportunity is using phase change materials The most common is water, which changes to ice with absorption of energy. And you certainly can think of ways to create ice during the day and use that ice during the night to maintain the room cool. And that's a standard technology, but it hasn't been adapted to these small scale cool rooms that we're talking about.
And I'll just briefly mention here, the other key thing is about maintaining the temperature throughout the night is to not only have the good insulative panels, but we did a research project through Cassette Start University, and they noticed that opening and closing of the door is one of the major drivers of increases in temperature. So another option to add here is a pre-cooling room that you just insert on the front of the CoolBot device that really help reduce the amount of workload for those batteries and the solar panels. But I believe that's it. Michael, do you have anything else to add?
No, that's it.
Great, thank you.
Great, thanks, Archie. Yeah, one more thing you could do is put a plastic curtain in the door opening, and that'll help as well. Okay, so thank you for that presentation. We're going to shift gears a little bit and start to talk a little bit about the dry chain, which is really important for safety and also for maintaining quality. Just to remind our panelists, we're over our hour that we were hoping to use on presentation. So please do stay within the time that's allotted for your presentation. So I'm going to turn it over, I guess, to Michael Reed again to talk about maintaining the dry chain. Thank you, Michael.
Yes, thank you. So I'm going to talk very briefly about tools for what we call the dry chain. Next slide. The dry chain, if you can just click through this, that'd be good, is a concept that Kent Bradford here at Davis developed, analogous to the cool chain. Next slide. And it's critical for maintaining quality of dried foods, grains, pulses, fruits, vegetables, fish, and meat. And so the central concept of any chain is that the weakest link is the most critical area to examine, but all links in the chain matter. And in the case of the dry chain, that's adequate drying, dry storage, and maintaining dryness during distribution. The weakest link probably in the dry chain is adequate drying. And this is a huge issue. Fungal toxins that can develop in improperly dried food products, particularly staple grains, can result in toxins that lead to acute and chronic disease, including childhood stunting. And so these little kiddies, 8 years old, every one of them is below the median height for their age group in India, where 38% of the children are stunted. The stunting results not only in physical reduction in physical development, but also reduction in mental acuity. And so it's a real problem, and it results, at least in part, from contamination of foodstuffs with these fungal toxins. We can reduce fungal contamination by reducing the amount of water in the product so that the water activity of the product is less than 0.65, which is equivalent to a relative humidity in equilibrium with the environmental air of 65%. So if we keep the humidity in a dried storage environment below 65%, these fungal toxins will not increase. The dry card is a tool that we developed to provide what's equivalent to the thermometer in the cool chain, a simple tool for measuring the amount of humidity in the air. Next slide. A printed card, strip of cobalt chloride indicator paper is used to provide a measure of humidity in the environment. Next. And a window in that laminated card allows the cobalt chloride paper to respond to the ambient humidity. Next. And as you can see, there's a color reference scale with a line that shows where it's safe and where it's not. And 65% is the safe level, usually corresponds to a purplish color of the indicator paper. The card has been made accessible in local languages around the world. We have international collaborators, and Serafin is going to talk briefly shortly about his experience in Rwanda, We also have a format for the card that doesn't require literacy, and so people can use it even if they're unable to read the words. If there's a problem, this is the issue. How do we go about drying the product that's not adequately dried? Open air drying works well in certain environments, Mediterranean climates with dry summers, but in humid or monsoon tropics, it's not such a good idea. And so people use high temperature electric or gas drying, but that's not economic for small scale producers. And solar drying has been proposed, and there's quite a range of technologies that have been suggested for that. And the Horticulture Innovation Lab was involved in developing several technologies using solar energy for drying products, particularly fruits and vegetables. So Beth already showed a picture of this chimney dryer next, which uses convection up a chimney to draw warm air over product and dry it much more efficiently than the traditional cabinet dryers. Cost, complexity, and capacity are all issues in drying products successfully in the developing world next. And so the chimney dryer has been effectively used with fruits, vegetables, and even fish, herbs and spices. We haven't yet tested it with meat though. Most recently, we've been working with a larger scale dryer that's more adapted to the use with grain we call the pallet dryer. It uses discarded pallets, which are commonly available, a sheet of plywood, some clear and black plastic, and what is becoming more cheap and readily available throughout the world, small solar panel and a simple fan, typically a computer cooling fan. All up the cost of this device is less than $100. Lastly, storage solutions, storing products next in open weave bags is not a successful idea if you want to maintain a low equilibrium relative humidity. And so people have developed a range of bags that are designed to prevent accumulation of moisture by product that's been adequately dried. That's especially an issue in the humid tropics. And these are some of the materials that are used for that purpose. Take home is that although dried food is the foundation of civilization, there are substantial losses and contamination with toxins. Using the dry chain can prevent insect attack, particularly avoid mycotoxin contamination. And we have developed some simple and easy tools to dry and store dried product. And just a shout out for the dry card, which Seraphin will discuss more as a cheap and effective tool for monitoring the dry chain. And I think that's the end of my presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. That was a great overview of the dry chain and the importance of the dry chain for nutrition security in the world, and some of the technologies that have been developed to address that. So now it's my great pleasure to turn the spotlight to Seraphin Nyang'Senga to talk about scaling of the dry card in Africa.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm glad to meet you. Yeah, thank you. A very good presentation by Michael. I will just really briefly talk about the experience of dry card in Rwanda, and really we have really gone beyond Rwanda by promoting this technology, which has really received a lot of excitement on behalf of farmers. I mean, farmers don't believe us when we tell them that this device is for below $1. They say, hey, how come? Because they are used for these moisture meters, very expensive devices. So it is really a technology that attracted excitement from the farmer to the even policymakers here because of its affordability and its easy to use approach. Next. So Mike has really talked about it, the problem of fungal contamination in Africa. 40% of cancer cases, liver cancer cases, are attributed to fungal contamination. Those are the information from the African Union, and Africa is losing a lot. You know, we are paying a lot, losing nearly $670 million due to product rejection, and all is due to fungal contamination. And also, just to say what has been said, the problem of stunting, which is worsened by aflatoxin contamination. And all of this really affects really the achievement of SDGs in our developing countries. Next. So why a dry card is receiving a lot of excitement, is causing a lot of excitement on behalf of smallholder farmers and other dealers in the crop value chains, is that really the available moisture meter on the market, they are really very, very expensive, and they are out of the reach of small scale farmers. So they go from 500 beyond, and the other available options are the digital humidimeters, which are still really, not that expensive, but they require batteries to operate. And if you know the context of our developing countries, buying batteries is another cost to the farmer that the farmer is not willing again to pay. Yeah, so that's really how dry card comes in as a simple, easy to use. When I talk to farmers, I tell them that it's like a rapid test, as just to really to monitor the dryness of your produce. Next. So it has been like 4 years since I left US, since I left UC Davis, when I brought back home this technology. But really, we put in a lot of efforts to disseminate this technology, because we believe this technology can help smallholder farmers in Rwanda and out of Rwanda. So we got really excitement beyond Rwanda. We got African Union, Pan-African Aflatoxin Control Partnership. They invited us, and when we presented the technology, they really gave us an award. We really we have managed to sell more than 20,000 dry cards. Some in Rwanda were bought by the United World Food Program Rwanda, other by cooperatives. But the really exciting news is when we got this Sasakawa Africa Association, which works in 6 African countries. They really imported something like 5,000 dry cards to distribute in Ethiopia, Mali, Burkina Faso. And recently, a company from Sierra Leone, they contacted us, and we managed to sell them something like 2,000 dry cards that we shipped to Sierra Leone. And their feedback is really encouraging, that the farmers are loving the device. Next. So as I said, dry card is a technology that doesn't need any extra skill, even from making it, manufacturing it, even for its operation. The ladies that you see here are the ladies who found employment, because whenever we found there is an order to manufacture dry card, we just use those ladies and other young people who get really an income, because for each dry card they make, they get a profit. So here we can see those ladies, like here in blue color, you see that lady, she's a primary school graduate, but she's training other farmers about the dry card. Very simple to use. Anyone can really, it doesn't need any extra skills or interpretation. When the color changes to blue or purple, your produce is dried. When the color changes to pink, you have to redry your product. So also we really thank the UC Davis Horticulture Innovation Lab, which provided us with I call it a booster grant of $5,000, which allowed us really to train around 1,000 lead farmers who went out to train more farmers in cooperatives. So that really helped us a lot. But really, the beauty of this is really those temporary employment that are created for low-skilled people. Next. So dry card is hitting now. Recently, we got international organization reaching out to us. We got the IFAD that really took a decision to post the dry card in their website as a rural solution. This is really a good news because I mean people from all African countries and beyond can now access the full description of dry card and how it can help out. And the USAID Feed the Future Hingaweze project, which is one of the largest Feed the Future project in Rwanda, they came to us and they provided us with a grant in terms of equipment, printers and other equipment for us really to manufacture dry card and reach out to many farmers. And the Agra, which is really one of the largest philanthropic organizations in Africa, they are reaching out to us to help us reach more farmers because to break the logistical barriers, because dry card is a low-cost device. The margins are not that high, so the Agra is helping us to work out on a distribution channel so that you can reach many farmers in Rwanda and beyond Rwanda. And yeah, also the East African Grain Council, which we are now part of it. We are now a full member of the East African Council, which allows to reach in their 8 countries of operations. Next. So we just really are ending by saying that really we still have a challenge ahead of us to reach so our clientele, our customers. But so far the feedback is good. We got the approval of dry card technology by the Rwanda government, which is a very encouraging. The Rwanda government, through the Rwanda Agricultural Board, they conduct the validation of the dry card, and they gave us a validation, and the Rwanda Standard Board gave it a validation, which gives us the credibility, I mean, to talk to farmers about this technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Seraphin. That's really encouraging and so exciting to see all the success that you're having and how much that technology is being, how it's being well received by farmers. So now, last but certainly not least, bringing up the end of our formal part of the panel is Dr. Julio Lopez. Julio is going to talk about education and training at Zamorano and beyond.
Thank you, Dr. Beth. And thank you for inviting me, just for presenting information and sharing information with this panel of experts. As we know, I'm going to talk about scaling technologies and training. Zamorano, as any other university, has its own program for extension. But in our case, the extension program is connected directly to the Regional Innovation Center for Vegetables and Fruits. So many institutions in Central America, farmers and a group of farmers seeing this as a reference for technologies in agriculture. Well, the operational structure of the center, in this case, these centers offers research, technology, validation of technology coming from other centers and from other universities. It also presents a good offer in extension, working also with communities close to Zamorano. And we have an extension program outside of Zamorano in Honduras and also in other countries outside of the region of Central America. We include also the Caribbean. We have an educational module strictly designed and especially designed for students at Zamorano, and also for inviting a student coming to the institution. So the center is focused especially in low-cost technology for crop production, post-harvest, food security and food safety. These two lines closely work with the people in nutrition here at Zamorano. We work also with integrated pest management for small areas. because we have here a lot of farmers working in very small area, like 500 square meter or 1,000 square meter production. We have also a unit working with the rural food processing. Zamorano at this point has connection for raising money with local donors, research and donor foundation, academy, and another friends of Zamorano. We believe that it's very important to have a key institution like a partner institution working in this kind of scaling technologies. For example, we appreciate the local NGOs. There are a lot of local NGOs here in Honduras, international NGOs like CARE, for example, World Neighbors, and others. Government programs, we especially work with DICTA, which is an institution, the branch technological part of the Ministry of Agriculture. They do research and extension work. And also we have connection with a university program extension because they have a really nice cover. It is important also the private sector, especially those who work with the fruit and vegetable for exportation. And we have a very nice connection with several and many cooperatives in Central America or farmers cooperative. All of these things go directly to those who use the technologies, like farmers especially, professional people, students, and other. Right now, for example, when I said another, we are attending a group of non coming from the Catholic Relief Services, for example, and we teaching them how to produce food. I mean, that's the idea. I mean, providing this kind of services. One important thing also for Zamorano through the center is that we have also the direct connection with the farmers, just for having from them some retroalimentation. Okay, technologies for small scale farmers. I mean, the center at this time is working with 19 technologies. But the most successful technologies that we use here with our farmers in Central America are the mesh house and macro tunnel, like some other explained before, low pressure irrigation system, which are also dedicated just for farmers who switch, for example, from a conventional agriculture to a protective agriculture. We have also CoolBot, small scale cold rooms, and they're working very well. SEC, also, which is the zero energy cool chamber. I mean, this is a technology very important and very exciting technology because it's used in the dry corridor. We call the dry corridor the dry areas of Central America, especially Honduras, El Salvador, and Nicaragua, where people has a lot of problem with post-harvest fruit and vegetables. Solar dryers, we have the dryer from UC Davis, one from FAO, and also we have a dryer that Zamorano developed just trying to accommodate the situation for farmers here in Honduras. We also have a hydroponic crops and vertical crops. Many times we have a lot of groups, women groups, asking just for making the agriculture more efficient. So we have that technology available for them. The strategy we use is we establish and develop our own programs in extension, but many times we go also into a program in progress. In this case, we have some agreement with those institutions. We do also university social responsibilities actions. In this case, we work with other groups of key institutions, for example, 5-in-1 institution. Chair in Spanish is compartir, Remar, which is a Spanish name also, and also a children foundation called Pestalozzi. All this institution has worked with the children and young people, which is in drug, and also they are abused, also abandoned, and a big portion of this population belong to gangs, and also what we call maras here in Central America, and we have to take care, yes, when we go working with them. So the strategy also allow us just to develop specific modules according to the population we attend. We design a specific curricula depending on the agriculture areas where we work with, and we choose the extension method just for applying this. I mean, the extension have also some tools like short courses, for example, field days, inside visits. If we have a group, very organized group, then we facilitate a farmer fields school, which is really good and very efficient just for transmitting and translation technology to them. And the adaptation and adoption of those technologies is really very good when you use that kind of methodology. We are starting using sending information through phone. Just started this 2020, but because we didn't have the opportunity to go to the field. So, but we have a really good constraint in the rural area. I mean, people has a phone, that's right, but they don't have really a good connection. The connectivity is really very bad in the rural areas here in Honduras and other countries in Central America. So all of this go to the farmers, but an important thing is that this technology has to be in demand. I mean, the feedback from the farmers to the center is very important. We select with the farmers, I mean, what technology is okay for them, and they decided the technology is okay for them after they try it. When we talk about farmers training, I will put an example with short courses. The short courses we have here at the center, for example, we offer about 5 courses during a normal year. 4 of these courses is dedicated to farmers, and 1 course is an international course. These courses for farmers is about 3 days, and for specialists is about 5 days. So taking an example, we have already an international post-harvest course. This course, for example, take 5 days. This is the 5th edition, which was done in June 2019. So 2020 was impossible because of the pandemic, but this international post-harvest course, when they initiated, sharing this information with the professional people. So it started in 2015, 2016, and those 2 initial courses were just for developing capacity building for Zamorano and key institutions in Central America for post-harvest. This post-harvest course was totally supported by a grant from USDA FAS, and also we are still receiving supporting from different institutions that were supported for this grant. So at the initial, we had scientific support from UC Davis and another scientific coming from other countries. And anyway, I mean, if the course is for farmer or this is developed for professional people, I mean, it has to have theoretical training 30% and practical training 70%. So when you switch for a farmer, short course, it changed a little. I mean, for farmers, we use about 80 to 90% practical training. This is because about 45 or 50% in some time, the farmers are illiterate people. So you have to develop a special curriculum for them. So go directly to the practical training. It's more easiest for us to share information, to be adapted, also the technology and adopted for them when you do a practical trainings. After that, all the group, after the 5 days, for example, in this case, they receive a diploma, which is given by Zamorano. So we certificate that this group received the special training international post-harvest course. My last slide, in this case, is devoted just for the in-service training. This is very interesting. In this case, for example, the in-service training is dedicated specifically for farmers. So this is a 5 days activity. So in this case, we receive at Zamorano a group of farmers, which a number is about 6, 10, or 12 farmers. This depends of the area they work, depend also about the facilities Zamorano has, and also if this is a summer or raining time. Well, depending on that, we receive 6 or 10 or 12 people coming to Zamorano for doing the in-service training. What that meaning? In this case, this is 100% practical training. When the farmers come to Zamorano, they receive an orientation, they receive also a program, and that program is specifically designed for them. They do a field work, planting and crop management. I mean, they go directly to the field every day from 6:30 a.m. in the morning to 4 p.m. So in this case, they do everything just in the right way, how Zamorano works. When we have a group of these, normally they express that they are interested in 2 or 3 technologies that they want to know better. So in this case, they start placing or managing technology, setting those technology. We have an instructor with them. So in the center. So if they want, for example, to establish irrigation system, a low pressure irrigation system, then we have the material over there, we teach them, but they have to do it. I mean, they have to establish it in the way that how they can manage and manipulate the technology. For example, if they want to develop a SEC or zero energy cool chamber, so we have the material, we teach them, but they have to build it. One important thing, and I agree with the other presenters, is that we also show them how to do a very good harvesting and handling product, because this is important. Most of the post-harvest loss is right here. I mean, at this point, it's about 20–25% of losses when they don't do really a good handling of this product. We show them what is the meaning of quality product, how they can select quality product just for marketing, and also they go and do some exercises just for knowing about food safety. Because Zamorano has a philosophy, learning by doing, so the farmers had the possibility to share and to experience in some other ideas and have more conversation between them, among them, and also they have the experiences of Zamorano. At the end of these 5 days, also they have a diploma, which is given by Zamorano. So this is all that I have just for sharing. And we have really a very small group. Normally 3 or 4 people working here at Zamorano, but with the project that we have outside of Zamorano, for example, in El Salvador, which is another country that we have some connection with them, directly with the Minister of Agriculture and Minister of Education, we have about 15 people working over there, and they are also Zamorano people working using this technology. Well, thank you very much, and if there is any question, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Julio. It's really exciting to see all the great things happening at the regional center there and also at Zamorano in general. The practical training was particularly interesting to me. All right, so now we do have still some time left, and this is the most important part of this session, is to get feedback from our experts who are joining us. And I hope that you have all enjoyed the presentations and learned some things. We have joining us Cheryl Harrison with Vivia. We have Jeff Lejeune with FAO. We have Daniel Perico from Deloitte. and Lisa Kitanoya from the Post-Harvest Education Foundation. You all come with a wealth of expertise. Some of you are more interested in the dry chain, perhaps. Others are more interested in the cold storage. And then some of you are more interested in this whole topic broadly. So I want to open it up, first of all, for questions from our experts, not just questions, but also, comments. Is there something you heard that you'd like to add to, or you have maybe a challenge to the speakers about? We'd love to get some conversation going to try to address some of those goals of the session of figuring out, like, where do we go from here, and how do we actually get these technologies more adopted out there and used in the world? So please, who would like to ask a question first? Everyone's going to be shy.
So I can chime in.
Please do. Thank you, Jeff.
All right. So one, I congratulate all the speakers. It's fun to hear the success, because I was involved many years ago at the inception as a recipient of a grant through this program, but then kind of went my different ways, if you will, and to see how these things have progressed. So that's great. My background is as a food safety expert, and so I listened to all of your talks from a different angle. And what I didn't hear was how important they were for food safety. Although they were important for food safety, every one of your talks was important for food safety, but I didn't hear it. I mean, I think we've seen this this evolution, if you will, for an investment in agriculture over time, from investing in producing more food initially to investing in producing more nutritious food over time. And then eventually, this idea of more nutritious and safe food came on board. And now we're seeing even another transition, I think, more nutritious, safe, and sustainable, productive food systems. So I see these things, but they're embedded in your talks, but they don't hit you in the face. And I think because in terms of food security, we need, again, that's probably the drivers of this. We need, adequate, nutritious, and safe food for all people at all times. Okay. And if it's not safe, it's not food. So I think it needs to be there. And I think you're doing some great work. I mean, in terms of microbial contamination, when we have viruses and parasites, but bacteria, I mean, the three things that they really need to survive are moisture, a food source, and some warmth, right, to proliferate, because they double in size, every 20 minutes. So every one of your talks are here. I mean, I just look at like the nets, the insect nets. So we know that produce that is damaged by insects or trauma or something like that, post-harvest losses, I mean, they exude all kinds of lovely juices, and the bacteria just feast on that. And so if they're contaminated, there's more likely that microbial contaminant could proliferate on there. So you're not only the post-harvest loss, but as you increase their losses due to spoilage organisms, those pathogens are also proliferating. Okay, so preventing the damage to the crops prevents the likelihood that those organisms can persist and proliferate. The same goes for the packaging, unhygienic packaging locations, washing with dirty water. You're just not only introducing spoilage organisms, I just see all these organisms being added. I've seen, the microbial contamination of tomatoes with coliforms increase 100-fold from the time it comes off the vine in one of these countries until the time it's sold either on the ground or in an unhygienic place in the marketplace. And that's really contributing to food loss and also food illnesses. And then there's one more, again, obviously the cool bot and the temperatures that goes back and the moisture. Those two things, contribute to the bacterial growth. So I think those are the real things. I think you're not selling yourselves enough, and in terms of the value that you've been contributing to food safety, but I think you could. Okay. And this is a real, and the food safety aspect, and I'll get my punchline in here a little bit, is a One Health thing. Everybody, engineers, agronomists, all these people need to play a role in One Health for food safety. Because, and there's my dog, One Health. Because you can't have a One Health, a healthy animals, people, planet, plants, without a food safety, because people are going to get sick. And it goes the other way around too. You can't have food safety without One Health, i.e. everybody investing in these kind of innovations to move it forward to make a safe food supply, so we do have food security. So those are kind of some points that I took from the talks, and hopefully that are helpful for your discussion.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that input and those comments. I think you made a number of really important points. And, it's pretty clear that many of the practices we use to extend the shelf life and maintain quality also help us with managing some of the food safety risks. Of course, there are other things we need to do as well. I really liked your emphasis on the nutritious, safe, and sustainable as being really the emphasis now. And I do agree that these technologies touched on a lot of all of that. I was thinking about the net houses, and one other benefit for them in terms of food safety, when we focus on the reducing pesticide use, but also at least I know some insects can transmit pathogens, bacteria onto plant surfaces. So by reducing the number of insects in the area, that may also play a benefit there as well.
And Beth, could I briefly mention just a quick case study too? That's a really interesting point, Jeff. We had a project in Nepal where we promoted the chimney dryer, and one of the big messages we had was how fast it is at drying product. And a take home from actual users was that they're really interested in how safe and how hygienic the food was underneath the plastic. So yeah, we learned that, that message is permeated to the ground level. And we, started changing some of the messaging in our training because of that too, that we highlighted a different thing versus the speed, the low cost, which we thought would be, a key advantage, so that's an interesting point, Jeff.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I remember just this little anecdote here. You showed, actually, maybe it was Michael showing grains being dried on the ground. I had no idea that I would be living in Rome at this stage of my life, but I did live here when I was a young child with my family. And I remember running home from school with my brother one day, and we tore down the sidewalk and ran right through this woman who had all her grains spread out on the sidewalk to dry. And the reason I remember that is because I had to go back and pick every single one of those things up. But you could see how the contamination would be easy to occur, whether it be wildlife or wild, crazy kids, that could really contaminate something. So this is a better way to dry things. And obviously mycotoxins, aflatoxins are a huge issue for concerns for food safety around the globe. Over.
Great. Go ahead.
I was interested in Jeff's comment about pathogens growing on the surface of product, and just thinking, we often talk about using plastic bags to reduce water loss and things like leafy greens as a alternative strategy at ambient temperatures that would actually exacerbate that situation, I suppose. I don't know if there's any data on that.
I'm not familiar with the data, but you put those moistures, heat, and nutritious substrate together, and you've got the perfect pressure cooker for bacteria.
Right. Yeah, it's another reason why we really want to move towards cooling. Even if we can reduce water loss with packaging, we really do need to try to get the product cool. So I was hoping we could spend a little bit of time talking a bit about the cold storage. I was really encouraged by the story from Cambodia about how successful the packing house has been. It seemed like it was in some ways a demonstration of what was possible. And it seems like there's interest. And I know there's been uptake in Honduras as well. And maybe in Rwanda too. But there's always the issue of the cost of the cold room, right? Even with the small scale cold room, it's expensive. And Archie touched on a number of these factors, the cost, but also the best location to site it and what the best business model is for something like this. I would love to hear some discussion amongst the group about some of these issues that really need to be addressed to make this technology more available.
Could I make could I respond to that one? This is Lisa.
Sure, we'll start with you, Lisa. Please go ahead.
Over the last 10 years, the post-harvest education has disseminated more than 200 CoolBot units. And some of it was during training or for specific company users. Others were for new projects or small companies that wanted to try it for themselves, mostly in Africa, somewhat in South Asia. The things that we came up against were the most critical things were that people could not afford the insulated panels. And so they were trying all kinds of things. In India, they had really good success with using a very old technology of thick mud brick. So it was almost a meter wide walls that they were using to make their cold rooms. And they were having, very good success, low cost, good insulation. In Africa, one of our post-harvest network people tried using plastic bottles that were stuffed with more plastic and laid end to end, so that it was approximately half a meter thick between two brick walls. And that was in Uganda. She had some very good success with that. Her background was in engineering, so she did all the math first to decide how thick the walls needed to be to get a good insulation from just what was typically just waste materials in the community. So those are two ideas that have been used.
Great, thank you. Michael.
I just wanted to say, Archie showed a picture of a round brick structure that was built in Uganda as a cool room, and that was a double wall room. Unfortunately, what happened there was we sent all the equipment over. This is a long time ago now, and it was blown up by the local electricity supply, so it never actually worked. But that was interesting to me because the construction of that double walls building was apparently, pretty standard for folks in the area and was easily done. So I do like the idea of really thick walls. Again, vapor barriers are so important because so much of the potential heat load can be condensation on the coils.
Good point. Yeah, what about this issue of tariffs on some of these products? I think it kind of cuts across agriculture maybe in general, but in the post-harvest space where we need certain infrastructure. Has anyone had success with convincing local governments to modify policies, or national governments, I guess, in that case? And I know you were telling us that at least the government of Cambodia was supporting cold storage. Maybe they're not reducing tariffs, but how are they supporting cold storage in Cambodia?
Yes, but so I would like to say maybe because you raised this point, become like 2 points. So the first one I would like to mention to Chirag about the food safety concern. So because we think about the packing house, the dead house can help to reduce the microbial load for food contamination, because mainly microbiology. But actually, we are not sure yet. I have just one student study recently. We have like designed two types of transportation and using cold chain or using package from Battambang province to Phnom Penh province. But of course, at the end, when we count the microbial, it just decreased a little bit when we have the cold chain. But it's non-significant difference. Just in terms of the number, it's of course it reduced a little bit under the satisfactory level for food safety for E. coli, Salmonella. But there's still the contamination. So I guess the maintain of the quality of the ice, the maintain quality of the box, ice box to use for the transportation still be important. I mean, we compare the conventional practices for the supply from the province about 300 kilometers away. Using conventional, we just put the vegetable under in the box, in the card box, the paper box. While the improved box, we use the ice box. But again, of course, the microbial load is still not so different. Not different. We would like to repeat again for the experiment as well. But of course, there is the reason that maybe because the ice and also the ice box that and maybe also practical hygiene from the field and also at the packing house still be limited. This is why the microbial load still available. So this is one I would like to raise also, that we concern a lot about the food safety about this. And in Cambodia, we also challenge with not just only the microbial, but the kind of nematode. So when we grows, and maybe because of the compost or maybe because of the irrigation water, then at the end, our fresh vegetable, leafy vegetable mainly, contaminate a lot with the nematode, with the small worm. So this is a even bigger problem than some other well-known microorganisms. And we have to find a way how to wash those kind of vegetable, different disinfectant agents. It's not just water, because if just only the water, it's not cannot remove that kind of pathogen. So we have to find a way how to remove those pathogen when washing.
So, yeah. We're getting close to out of time. So can you just in one minute say a little bit about the cold storage? That'd be great.
So the cold storage, the government is very supportive at the moment, and it has been like support mainly currently by the IFAD, the funding. So in each province, they at the PDAF, Provincial Department of Agriculture, they try to have at least one as the model to show to the farmer. So this is a part of the policy for the government to support the cold room for the cold chain. So maybe that's all from me for now. Yeah, thank you very much.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. So we only have just a couple minutes left. There's so much that we could talk about. I do want to acknowledge Cheryl Harrison from Vivia has been also very active in scaling dry card, similar to Seraphin, and that program's been so successful. I guess there probably are still some challenges to continue to get it out there. In 1 minute, Cheryl, do you have a suggestion, or is there a need that the dry card technology has to be scaled better?
No, I absolutely do. So our work has been in India, pan-India, and I just wanted to share with the group what we've been working on is the interrelationship of the dry card to certifications and traceability. And so what we have done is we put a QR code that is a unique code on every single dry card, so that when the farmer can actually activate that card through their mobile device, they can get information and let's say instructions and demonstrations in their own language in that region. And we also, through that activation, know that they're using it, and they can actually use through WhatsApp interactive technologies to actually answer certain crop related and just-in-time questions. The other thing is we have deployed a online portal so that the dry card can be ordered directly from the portal. And so that's another, way that we're actually looking at traceability in different regions. And obviously those cards are usually ordered by distributors or by people who are looking at monetizing looking at increased valuation of their crops through the dry card. So through certifying this, in other words, the distributors will know that the crops that are coming in are dry, for example, and in that way they can be certified in lots through the distribution networks. And what we're trying to do is build efficiency through mobile apps and through the portal to get product aggregated and to markets much faster without going through middlemen, which we found was really compromising the quality of the crop. I did want to share with the group something else, which is just
very quickly, because we're at the end of our time.
Which is about thinking about mobility and resiliency. Mobility is using some of the cold chain opportunities to build mobile units that could actually have the technologies, all the solar, all the expenses, but actually move to different farms when it's just a different model that we've been looking at. And secondly, about resiliency really quickly is we have to be thinking about the ecosystem, that weather patterns are going to be more extreme, dried areas are going to be drought, how could I say, challenged in greater ways, and monsoons are going to be more difficult to deal with. So we have to think about resilient solutions that can actually withstand these extreme weather conditions and look at the impacts that will have on the farmers. So structures will have to be very sturdy, for example, for winds and monsoons and this kind of thing. So I just want to challenge all of us on the call to think about the entire ecosystem and also sort of a more holistic approach to the economies in these different regions. But thank you. It's a pleasure. It was a wonderful session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cheryl. And that's a great way to kind of wrap everything up. Before I turn it back to Ermias for final remarks, I just want to thank all my panelists, and I want to thank our experts for joining us for this conversation. We can see how the technology developed, some of it developed at UC Davis and then disseminated out and shared together with our colleagues around the world. Working on this together as teams has really advanced these technologies. There's a lot more work to be done, but I think we've made a good start. It was really nice to hear the updates on where these technologies stand. Thank you again for contributing to this important topic. And Ermias, I turn it back to you to close out the session.
Thank you very much, Beth. I think this session has been really, really great. And thank you for expertly moderating the session. And thank you everybody else who was able to join us today on this USDA Foreign Agricultural Service supported events. We very much appreciate USDA FAS support to enable rich discussion on all action tracks of the UN food systems and highlight innovations developed through the US government and host country collaboration. We've seen a lot of examples of that collaboration, USAID and USDA FAS support that has contributed to this success that we've done over the last couple of hours. I'm sure we could have had a discussion for a much longer period of time, but unfortunately we have to close it now. And the discussion will be summarized and it will be submitted to the UN Food Systems Summit in the next couple of weeks. And in the next few days, we will be sending you a draft of this report for your review. And once we get your edits, then we'll be able to include in the final draft. And the recording of today's dialogue will be available in a few weeks on the UC Davis World Food Center website. So again, thank you for joining us and spending your time and sharing your knowledge with us. Have a good day.